Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. Now today we are going to visit a beautiful garden in the north of Dublin. It's a seaside garden, so benefits from sea air, but on the downside has salt spray and wind to contend with. It's the beautiful garden of Nuala and Connell, and we'll hear from them very shortly. Now this garden is a real treat for the senses. So many beautiful herbaceous colours and rooms, but garden rooms like you've not seen them before. So each section of the garden has a very different mood from the next. Come on, let's have a look. Today we're visiting Ardon garden in the north of Dublin, and as with most private gardens, what first greets us is the front of the house. Already we can tell that this is a plants person's domain. The proximity of Ardon to the coast makes growing echiums possible, but look how artistically they're dotted around. Another striking plant here is Persicaria Purple Fantasy. And again demonstrating good plant management, this runner is constricted by potting it in an urn, far from the open soil. It's now time to go into the garden proper to meet Nuala and Connell, the two gardeners who have jointly created this jewel of a garden.
This is Nuala Doherty.
And this is Connell O'Queeve.
And together we create this garden.
In Ardon and Howth. And we're here for about 18 years, and we created the garden from, it was a greenfield site. It was a field on probably the side of a mountain, and we've had great fun creating it piece by piece. So we're sitting now in the red bed, in the centre of the red bed, in the herbaceous border, and this is the spot that gets the last of the evening sun. So Connell was really insistent that we would have this seat. I didn't want to give up any planting space at all, but we actually love this seat right here just taking the evening sun.
Yeah, and the garden benefits from the creative dialogue, between the two of us. So one of us will have we each have our zones, and so you can have an opinion on someone else's zone, but you need their permission to make a change. And so, but we have fun with the dialogue, and always at table there's books out and looking up the Douentza and other sources for where to learn and get ideas and advice and how to develop the garden.
And it's a real sense of we are self-taught, so it was a real sense of learning by doing. Learning by visiting other gardens, learning by reading, and learning by listening and actually practicing, trial and error.
Yeah, and so now the garden is part of the UNESCO Dublin Bay Biosphere and also of the Dublin Garden Trail, and open for visiting.
I love the idea of a creative dialogue and the fact that both partners in this gardening team have their own zones in the garden. Something tells me, however, that this herbaceous area full of colourful perennials is Nuala's zone.
So you're looking into the herbaceous borders. The idea here is that we walk through the plants, so that we've just kind of cut quite a narrow path through the borders, and when you walk through that you're surrounded by plants. We've brought out some of the tall ones to the front and created a kind of airiness and also a kind of diversity of colour. Now while the borders are colour themed, they're not exclusively, and the big both challenge and delight in herbaceous planting is to get the sequence right, so that you've got planting right from June through to when those dahlias finally give up in November.
Nuala talks about sequencing and succession planting so that you always have some colour and interest no matter what time of year. I think the mark of successful succession planting is that when you look at a border you believe that it has been planted with only this very moment in mind. And I must say that looking through this colourful choreography of perennials, it's hard to see where tulips were in spring or dahlias will bloom in late summer, yet they're all in here. This cute little Buplorum is very sweet with its understated copper-coloured flowers. But the plant that really caught my eye was this unusual clover relative. This is Trifolium rubens, peach pink, and I just love its fluffiness. I'll definitely have to track this down. One thing I neglected to mention is that Connell is a sculptor, so you'll find many of his works displayed around the garden. I think my absolute favourite is these dancing hares. There's topiary too, in the form of this skillfully cloud pruned tree. What a superb backdrop.
So this is a new bed that we've put together last year, and it's a lemon and pale lemon and also pale blue, and just some of the planting is designed to create a kind of an airy feel. So this is a terrific plant here, Cephalaria gigantea, big yellow scabiosa, and you'll notice that we've brought them out to the front of the borders, but actually we've taken the leaves off a lot of them just to give an airiness so that you can actually see through the flowers to create no blockages in the beds.
Thank you very much for that tip on manicuring Cephalaria, Nuala. I grow this plant in my own garden. I'll have to try using it like you've done here. Now it's time to leave this garden room behind and venture into a zone that I feel is surely Connell's. Well, there's definitely a more subtropical vibe in this garden room. Isn't it gorgeous?
We set out in the garden to create a place of beauty, so with an aesthetic of, lovely place. And as part of that, we went for difference. So the different areas of the garden are completely different. What we discovered afterwards was that by having that diversity, it actually creates different habitats for different kind of creatures in the garden. And so, for example, here in the wet garden, the pond, which is rain fed, overflows into the planting, and which is constantly wet. The liner is underneath the pond, so newts from the pond can come out and feed the insects they need, are present in the wetland there for the baby newts. And so in those ways, actually, by going for diversity, we ended up with having a rich habitat. And so we were delighted then that the Dublin Bay, the UNESCO Dublin Bay Biosphere, invited us to be a partner garden of the UNESCO Dublin Bay Biosphere.
I can understand why newts and all variety of wildlife would want to spend time in this beautiful space. There's a variety of planting from Agave attenuata, tetrapanax, bananas and scheffleras, to Alstroemeria Indian summer, eucamus, eryngium, and lots more. But the best bit is this lovely seating area where it's easy to spend quality time in among the plants. This striking seahorse sculpture beside an urn looks brilliant, but it's cunningly positioned to draw the eye from the vegetable garden where we'll next visit. This is a stylish vegetable garden, and the raised beds are surrounded by copper to keep the slugs out. I understand that Nuala insists on a horticultural reason for every gardening decision, and copper certainly keeps slugs away.
The reason you have a glasshouse is to encourage growth, and the scientific word for growth is photosynthesis. And so what happens in photosynthesis is that the leaves take in carbon dioxide out of the air. So we've shown here in the polished concrete how photosynthesis works. The carbon dioxide is taken out of the air. The water, H2O, comes up out of the roots. The sun gives the energy to break up the carbon dioxide, to break up the H2O, and to rearrange it. The plant makes this sugar, C6H12O6, and you're left, if any of you done your maths, you're left with 12 extra oxygen atoms, which are bound together as 6 oxygen molecules, so we get the air that we breathe as well as the food that we eat.
Well, Connell, I hope your plants appreciate the encouragement. And here's a question for everyone. Do you see Connell and Nuala's little horticultural joke here? It relates to the fact that desert succulents have been planted ironically in front of the photosynthesis formula. While you puzzle over what the joke might be, it's time for another garden room. And here we have tall birch trees in an elegant woodland planting. This is a very calm, peaceful space. Just perfect for working out a puzzle. Cacti and succulents need to keep their stomata closed during the day so that they don't lose water to evaporation, so they can't photosynthesize. They open at night to let in CO2 for the plant to use during photosynthesis the following day. Night is cooler and not as dry, which means that less water will evaporate from the plant. Cacti store the carbon dioxide they take in during the night in their cells in the form of a chemical called malic acid. During the day, the malic acid is converted back to carbon dioxide and then into sugars. So cacti and succulents photosynthesize differently to other plants. And now on to the final leg of our garden visit. The greenhouse beckons. The door has been left ajar as if it just wants me to come in and take a look around. Well, I really wouldn't want to disappoint such a pretty greenhouse. Look at all these amazing grapevines. I wonder what they'll taste like. And that brings us to the end of this garden tour of Ardon Garden in Howth, North Dublin. Thank you to Nuala and Connell for being such excellent hosts and taking the time to talk to us. I've learned some new things today and gotten some exciting new ideas, and that's what it's all about. Thank you for joining us in this tour, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!